Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Recommendations Committee. My name is Bob Kelly. I'm the chair of the committee and chair of the Water and Sewer Subcommittee and Public Works General Subcommittee. We'll continue with introductions to my left.
Chris Zigmont from Crestview Drive, and I sit on the Human Services, Library, and Parks and Rec Subcommittee.
Evening, everyone. Corey Stevens, Finance Director.
Russ Dean, Town Manager.
Jennifer Perry, Public Works Director.
Matthew Berube, Water Sewer Manager.
Chris Newport, and I'm on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
Anthony Swan, 7 Marlborough Street, also on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
Anna Grazier, Warren Avenue. I'm on the General Government Subcommittee.
Liz Canada, Columbus Ave, Parks and Rec, Library, Human Services.
Thank you. We also have off mic Melissa Roy, the Assistant Town Manager, and Nancy Belanger, Select Board Representative. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Water and Sewer Department budgets. Chris Newport, and myself served on that subcommittee and met with Jen Perry, the Director of the Public Works Department, and Matt Berube, the Managing Engineer for the Water and Sewer Departments. And we had some very extensive and informative discussions and a lot of back and forth. And I think I've been able to put together a reasonable budget. As the narrative goes into some detail, there are a number of, as singular to the departments in town, water and sewer departments, not only are governed by personnel, equipment, and maintenance requirements of equipment and office equipment and field equipment, they're also governed by regulatory, for lack of a better word, constraints. Regulations on both the water side and the sewer side are required to be met in order to run the department. And a lot of times we have literally no input into the regulations and how to meet various constraints thereof. So a lot of these costs have gone up quite a bit, especially lab and chemical related costs. In a post-COVID environment, a lot of supply chain issues regarding a lot of those things. So another issue that the departments run into is they're down, as we talked about in the Public Works Subcommittee meeting a couple of weeks ago. The department's down 7 staff. I don't know what the overlap is to water and sewer, but there's some folks.
I believe we're down 3 in water and sewer.
3 in water and sewer. So similar to the Public Works general discussion, we've had to hire some contractors to take the place of field personnel who are, that we just don't have. And this has driven up some of our costs as well as delayed some projects. So we'll get right into it. As the first item, the water and sewer budget is on tab 4 of the budget. The first item is in full-time salary. We discussed this briefly at in the general meeting a few weeks ago. The department is looking for a GIS technician / manager, someone who will, we have been taking or collecting data with various handheld GIS equipment for a number of years. Matt Berube has sort of managed the effort of taking that information and putting it into drawings and files that we can use for future analysis. He obviously has a number of other duties to perform for the department, so we're hoping to get someone that can actually concentrate on this because there are a number of different departments in addition to the 3 public works divisions, planning and economic development, as well as conservation, could also benefit from this. So the details are similar to the previous narrative. The wage impact, it's and benefit impact for 2024 is only a partial year, or 2023, I'm sorry, is $47,479, with the full-time impact in 2024 will begin and will be about 94,958, again, wages and benefits. The subcommittee does support, as we did in the DPW general discussion, does support the hiring of this person. Any comments or questions?
Bob, I just wanted to let the committee know that I did do my diligence, and I apologize, I didn't have time to write a formal kind of memo, but I contacted and got responses from the town of Durham, the city of Dover, the city of Portsmouth, and the city of Rochester, what their GIS staffing looks like. And that some of them call it GIS/asset management, which is very similar to the approach that we're proposing. And they all recommended if they had more than one, the single position they felt that was most critical was a coordinator level position, which is higher than what we had been proposing. Durham has a program administrator that ranges from $64,000 to $82,000 a year, which is comparable to Exeter's grade 10 or grade 11 position. And as you saw in the write-up, I think we were proposing a grade 8 position, which was a GIS technician. Portsmouth has a GIS manager that ranges from $73,000 to $93,000, which is a grade 12 or grade 13. It kind of straddles our positions there. They also have 2 GIS technicians that are $56,000 to $71,000, which is a grade 8/grade 9. And they have a GIS specialist that ranges from $48,000 to $61,000. So altogether, they have 4 positions. And Rochester has 2 positions, a GIS asset management coordinator with a range of $73,000 to $93,000. Again, that's our grade 12 to 13. And a GIS technician of $56,000 to $71,000, which is grade 8, grade 9. So we may have been shooting a little bit low, but I haven't even had a chance to brief Russ or anybody
Right.
else on.
We're in
on
the
my
general
findings.
ballpark, though. I mean, even if we're maybe lower than the market.
Yeah, we're probably lower than the market. Durham just went through the process of bringing someone on board, I think last year, and they wound up hiring that particular, well, I guess I can say it because we're not saying names. They hired in the middle of the range at $75,000 to bring that position on.
Well, we'll
Any
have to see how
sense
it
on
goes.
why Portsmouth has so many? I mean, Portsmouth's not much bigger than Exeter, right? Is it because of the water?
I honestly don't know. I didn't have a detailed conversation with them. It was more of an email exchange. I know they've had one for a long time. It could be that they've grown their program, and most of these programs are citywide. They're not just specific to Public Works. They are covering all the departments. Some of them have gone more to IT. I think it was Dover is now responding to the IT and not the Public Works, but all the others are still within Public Works.
Okay, great. If we go down to line 55055, consulting services, there was a request for $80,000. The EPA is requiring public water systems to address aged lead pipe in their systems, and then by the end of 2024, come up with a plan for removing lead pipe, as lead leaching into the water supply is a significant health issue. The good news is there is a grant that we are on the final list. Is my understanding. Matt can address some of the details, but there is a grant available that would significantly reduce the request, as it pertains to the budget. Could you maybe just spend a minute on that, Matt, just to articulate it for us?
Sure, the lead service line replacement plan is a new rule that's coming into effect. What needs to be done is you need to take an inventory of all the services you have in town and come up with a plan for replacing any that have lead, galvanized pipe, or any lead pieces on the way in. So that needs to be done by October 2024. We currently are in the pipeline through DES to receive a $50,000 grant. I got an estimate from an engineer that it could cost anywhere from $80,000 to $90,000 to get this inventory done. So this could consist of old data that we have currently, and then if we don't have data, we gotta try to get into people's houses if they don't know what they're looking at. We may try a letter to see if they can tell us what's there, and if we can't, then we'll have to start getting inside. So it's a pretty heavy lift for the next year and a half.
Yes.
Since we just talked about GIS before, and I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but does this involve GIS or not?
Oh, yeah.
I would think it would, wouldn't it?
Well, it can be incorporated as probably a different form, but yeah, I think it's public record, so I think I almost have to let the public know where this is all happening.
Yeah.
So don't think that you're gonna hide away from
Right.
it. I think I have to publish it and let everyone know where everything is. So yeah, there'll be a GIS aspect, or at least an asset management software inventorying it, so we know, yeah.
Who owns the lines to the street? Like, because for sewer, the homeowner owns the transfer line. Who owns the water line?
To answer your question, the town owns from the main to the curb stop, and the homeowner owns from the curb stop in. But I don't know if it really matters to DES at this point. If you say you're not gonna replace it, the town will replace it.
So it's not, this won't be a, when a house is sold, there'll be some timeline.
There'll be a timeline to make sure that there's a plan in place. If it takes 10 years, I mean, it takes 10 years, but at least,
Interesting.
I don't know how long they'll let the plan go. But certainly lead has their eye because of Flint, Michigan and things like that. So, there may be where the town fixes it and there's a payment plan. I'm not sure of the legalities of all that yet. I don't know if the state even knows some of those, because they know that it's gonna be tough getting on private property.
Okay, but those costs should be borne by the homeowners.
Should be,
Okay.
but.
Yeah, understand.
Again, this is a plan, it's a new program, so
Yeah, it's
the
the
thought
beginning.
is.
Yeah,
I think
hopefully
that's why
there's a lot of
grant money
Yeah, I was gonna say,
available.
hopefully there's a lot of money.
Yeah, so that's the plan. So the way we calculated was that the grant, or the effort for the lead pipe was $80,000, $50,000 grant, so our part of it would be $30,000. And then historically, we've kept about $5,000 in for just general consulting services. Some years we don't spend it, some years we way exceed it. Anna?
I'm sorry, could you just say again what the October 2024 deadline is? Is that for inventory? What needs to be done by then?
The inventory and the plan to how to replace
Thanks.
everything.
So it's a plan, we don't actually have to do the
Do it.
fix, we have to have a plan.
Understood.
And I take it the grant is through your efforts and work.
Yeah, I have a consulting firm helping me with the application, and we're submitting it to DES.
Good work.
We've made the short list.
Great.
Yep.
So we're gonna hope for the best. So, the subcommittee is taking somewhat of a leap, but, the indications are pretty good. We're gonna get that grant, so that's
correct.
the direction we'd like to go.
And Mr. Chair, just so I understand, so hopefully we will get the grant, and that'd be great if we do. If we don't and we budget this way, then we just go over budget because we have to do this? Is that how it works, or we'll go somewhere else and look for money?
Well, again, we do have to October of '24.
Okay.
So if
We'll
for
get
some
another
reason
round
things
to-
don't work, this will, at a minimum, get us started.
Started, okay.
And Matt was trying to be a little
Well, so-
proactive on this, instead of waiting until next year's
Sure.
budget cycle and then only
course.
have 4 or 5 months to do it.
Yeah.
Now we'll have a year plus
Okay.
4 or 5 months. So it's not a catastrophe.
No.
If we don't get a grant, it just sort of stretches that out a little.
Okay.
What do you think of that, Jen?
Well, the state has already set aside these funds specifically for this effort. So we know that the money is there 100%. I believe they actually brought it in out of their ARPA funding. So it's guaranteed there, and I've heard that it's almost a guarantee that we're gonna get at least $50,000.
Awesome.
So
Great.
I don't think it's a concern that we're not gonna get it.
Okay,
Right.
awesome. Thank you.
So as you see on the report, the subcommittee is recommending an adjustment, downward adjustment to the line item by $55,000 to make the budget for 2023 $35,000, so that it'd only be well, it'd be, the difference between the 10,000 and then the lead pipe effort, $80,000, minus the grant, $50,000. So there's the net of $30,000 plus the standard $5,000 that we keep on the line, just for things happening. So $35,000. So I would entertain a motion for line 55055 to be changed to $35,000.
And I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Swan.
Second, Newport.
So moved and seconded for line 55055 to be $35,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We didn't have anything in detail to discuss in the rest of administration, if anyone in the subcommittee wants to bring something up. Otherwise, Corey, if you could give us an updated benefits total?
Yes, benefits, 124,828, 124,828.
Thank you. And then with the changes we just made, the new admin number?
502,773, 502,773.
I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved. Swan.
Second?
Second, Newport.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We did not have anything to change in billing. If anyone has any questions, we can go over that, but it seemed like it was pretty straightforward. New benefits on billing, Corey?
Benefits billing, 52,962, 52962.
Okay, and then a new water billing amount?
197,764, 197,764.
I'll entertain a motion to that amount.
So moved.
Thank you.
Swan.
Second, Newport.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, on to distribution. Distribution is one of these areas that we highlighted before where there were, due to lack of some staff in the Public Works Department, that we've had to hire contractors to try to get the work done. Road repairs in particular, and then system maintenance are two areas in particular, 55252 and 55296. Are areas where the Public Works actually had their budget request, it was actually higher than what was shown in the actual budget. The new numbers are shown in the report. And this again is due to just due more to lack of staff and having to pay a premium for out-of-house services.
Can I ask a question on that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So how does that, if you have budgeted staff that aren't hired, does that somehow come around and help pay for this increase? Does that make sense? Like if you've budgeted for staff and you're not paying them because they don't exist, that money goes to the general fund?
Well, it goes to the town reserves,
Yeah,
of
that's
which,
what- yeah.
Russ and Corey, allocate on paper.
Yeah.
the amount of those reserves that are for the water and the sewer funds. That there's not a separate account per se, but on paper, there's a separate fund.
Okay.
And yes,
Creates a budget surplus.
creates a budget surplus. And we
Okay.
have used that periodically to pay down debt or projects or things like that,
Okay.
much
So-
like the general fund.
So kind of this increase, in a sense, kind of nets out, because it ends, the non-hire position then would end up in the general fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Or
possibility.
it would offset,
Yeah,
like a position surplus would offset an expense increase.
yeah, okay.
Does that transfer down to the level of water and sewer pretty accurately, Russ? Relative to personnel and payroll, and then reducing the budget of water and sewer per se, or am I I'm probably not.
Is the question, do we spend the money?
No, but
For positions?
does the water and sewer budget get credited accordingly, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm not
well, the
sure.
water and sewer budgets are both enterprise funds,
Yeah,
so they're self-supporting.
yeah.
Right.
So anything that happens inside those funds, in terms of a surplus or an overspend, is part of the finances of those funds.
Okay.
When we do payroll, the water sewer staff get allocated
From those funds.
directly every pay period.
Thank you.
Okay, so the subcommittee supported an increase in the road repair of 55252 budget from $10,000 to $25,000. I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved, Swan?
Second, Newport.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor of a budget of $25,000 for road repairs indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. And then similarly down on system maintenance, 55296, if you add up the, in the notes, and what is required actually comes to $84,000. There was a sort of a disconnect, the 52 was carried over from last year, but the actual work to be done is $84,000. And Matt explained the details of this, and it sounded, a lot of the work that needs to be done is just maintenance on equipment that is in very corrosive environment. So we supported an $84,000 budget for line 55296 of 84, like I said, 84, and I'll entertain a motion to that amount.
Yeah.
Second?
So moved, Swan?
Second?
Second, Newport.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. And Matt, I'll let you be the hero. We'll talk about 55059. We got some good news on that.
Yeah, so the tank maintenance, I was under the impression we were still in a higher, more expensive year. I still think we are, but the sales rep told me to go with the letter. So we are able to reduce this line item from the original request, 154,023, to 115,100. So the 116,723 per year for Epping Road has been reduced to 77,772 and 45 cents now.
Miracle.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah.
much like a red flag challenge in the NFL, we're gonna vote on this before, before somebody changes their mind.
Good point. Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion for a budget of $115,100 for tank maintenance.
So moved, Swan?
Second?
Second, Newport.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And just, a couple of things. So for fire alarm communication, 55545, the reason why that is a new program And the fire department used to do this with in-house personnel. They have gotten out of the business from a town perspective of managing fire alarms. So various businesses, as well as Public Works, that has a lot of equipment that is fire alarmed, has had to do this themselves, and it's being done by a third party, a separate company that does this. So that's where that new number comes from. And then 55188, meters and backflow on the next page. Again, if you look at the notes and add up the numbers are actually 163,000. The 120 as a budget in '23 was an error. And there was a little bit of a write-up in the narrative, but basically, you know, we had a meter replacement bond a number of years ago that did about half of the meters, and the intent was over the next, 5 to 10 years to try to chip away a couple hundred a year. This number is fairly liquid, depending on what we had, what else we had that we had to budget. So we have not kept pace with 200 a year. There are a significant number of meters that are older than 10 years. These are, as we've discussed almost every year, meters are the cash register of the department. If they're running accurately, then we're getting an accurate revenue stream from people who are using water. If they're not running accurately, it could potentially go against the town. They generally slow down, they don't speed up, so it mostly goes against the town's interests if the meters go bad. Going bad goes, means they slow down.
I was
generally.
sure they were speeding up.
Yeah.
I was sure of that.
Very rarely. Yeah. When your teenager takes showers, they're speeding up. So the subcommittee agreed with a revision to that budget, again, 55188 to $163,000 from the posted 120. Any discussion on this?
Matt, we've discussed, I don't recall it in the most recent meeting, but your guy who does the magic on that, you still have that guy, and he's got the capacity to do it.
Oh, yeah. Between him and the street crew, as times of the year, we send out big 100 amounts of 100 letters at a time, and then we see what we get, and we just keep doing that. And
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'll entertain a motion for the budget amount of $163,000 for this line.
So moved, Ron.
Second, Newport.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We did not have anything else specific in this division. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. If not, Corey, do you have updated benefits for distribution?
Yes. 155,642, 155,642.
Thank you. And then with the changes that we've made, a new water distribution number?
Water distribution, 1,012,624, 1012624.
I'll entertain a motion for that budget amount for water
Can
distribution.
we just slow down for just a second?
Oh, sure.
Can you read that number again, Corey? Was that 1,012,012?
Yes, 1012624.
Thank you.
Yep.
So moved?
Thank you.
Swan?
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
Corey, do you have a correlating, just a percentage increase to that? Is that?
To that distribution budget?
Yeah,
13.2.
thank you.
Okay. Treatment, on to treatment. The first item that we had was on page 5, basin and lagoon cleaning.
Yum.
There were a number of figures thrown out in our meetings, Matt.
I'd like
I
to.
know we had talked about 5, and then I thought there was a 3 email, or what, did we?
5,000 will be a good number for
would
that
be
line
better
item.
than- Okay.
Yeah, that's what so 5K?
5K
That's
is
what my
what
notes,
what I'm anticipating,
picked up on somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I missed that on the report,
so that 12 is going to roll back to 5?
to 5.
Yes, please.
So that's line 55368,
Correct.
rolled back to 5,000.
Yes.
I know this has been brought up, but maybe for the public, there was a pretty big increase from 2022, and that's largely due to the increasing cost of chemicals
Where are we talking?
for just the overall treatment budget.
Yeah, I would probably attribute that line item was increased a lot. And electricity has gone up a little bit. And
Natural gas.
lab,
Yeah, if you look at the lab equipment,
Lab
and
equipment.
chemicals alone have gone up.
yeah,
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to get across, that's items that are out of the department's control, is what I'm trying to
Yes.
confirm,
Yes.
right? Okay.
we try to bid some of our bulkier chemicals, but some of the other ones are not in a bulky state. We can't get them in that, I don't have a tank to put them in, so they're coming in barrels. So that's a little bit, it's not a way that I can put in a bulk delivery.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to revise the budget for 55368 lagoon cleaning to $5,000.
So moved, Zwan?
Zigmont second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The, just as a, more of an administrative item, you see the equipment maintenance item has been overspent. There was some work on the clear well, work on the river intake that, again, just sort of the new world order, the contractor price was a lot more than what we had anticipated a year ago when we put together that budget, so just one of those things.
I have a question,
Sure.
Mr. Chair, but I don't want, it's on the very last line, so I'm not sure if we're there yet, but before we finish water treatment.
Well, again, if you go through the narrative, a number of the items are, again, just, we budgeted certain things last year and pricing changed. Pricing doesn't necessarily, like, chemical and lab companies don't necessarily follow a 12-month budget cycle for the town, so.
This is a question for Jen or Matt, I mean, just since alarms have become like alarming. Phone lease alarms, I know it's a small item, but can you just enlighten me on that?
We have a couple locations that in order to get alarms out, we have to use AT&T dedicated service. It's not connected to the town's alarm system, so
So
it's
it's a
like a
backup.
pager, yeah.
It's a backup, so when something fails, like just say the fiber line or some kind of communication
Yeah.
goes down, I have these texting devices at the groundwater treatment plant that doesn't get good service, so it's a texting device, and this is what can send out an alarm to us also.
Okay. So this is separate and distinct from the other alarms that we just put in, and it's necessary to have this in those locations?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, chemicals is a good example of what has happened in the last year. Our 2021 actual was 125,000. We added 10 to that for our 22 budget. We've spent over 140,000 already this year. And so now, we're looking to bump that up to 165. Lots of fuel surcharges, and then chemical costs many of them are directly tied to, the cost of oil. So as that goes up, you know, the costs that you got a quote from a month ago are now all of a sudden different. That's the explanation of that line. Any other questions in the treatment division?
No, other than, I guess, on that line, I guess the long view on that is that just gonna continue to ramp out of control, way out of our control. And, you know, the chemicals that we need, obviously, as water quality, you know, regulation and everything gets tighter and tighter, and certainly we want to deliver high-quality water. And, yeah, I was just curious to hear your take on, there's no alternatives to that, there's no, yeah.
The philosophy in water treatment is you always go for the best source, right?
Sure.
That requires the least amount of treatment and we've been trying to promote groundwater because it is easier to treat. It requires less chemicals than surface water.
Right.
But, you know, that's a long haul, as you'll hear more about that later on tonight and on Thursday night. It's not like we can just flip a switch.
Of course.
Yep. So.
But in your longer vision, I mean, that's a better path forward in the long haul, just from a treatment perspective.
It is, except that we do want to keep what we call the full quiver of options.
Sure.
It's really important, once you have a resource like a surface water, you don't want to give it up.
No, for sure.
But yeah, we prefer groundwater as far as it's easier to treat, it requires less chemicals to treat, and it's less expensive to treat.
And just given our proximity to Great Bay and Squamscott and stuff like that, with sea level rise, is there a projection for brackishness in groundwater in the our foreseeable future?
Probably not in our facilities and our water resources, but absolutely that is a concern in the Seacoast region, and there are, areas that have shown some saltwater intrusion, and some of it's old.
Sure.
Like old pockets, like prehistoric
Okay.
type pockets of saltwater. And if you overdraw your groundwater, you can pull that in.
Pull
You've
it
got to
in,
be really
sure.
careful with not over pumping.
Thank you.
Good question. So Corey, a benefits update on treatment?
Treatment benefits, 170,321, 170,321.
Thank you. And with the changes that we made, a new water treatment total?
928,713, 928,713.
So moved, Ron.
Second, Newport.
Any further discussion on the treatment division? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so, see the debt service, again, we don't have any definitive control over this. In capital outlay, just sort of going through, last year in 2022, we had budgeted a significant amount of money to redo some filters and clarifiers in the surface water plant. There was, the work began on that, and then it was poorly done, I guess, is the upshot of it done, and that was apparent fairly quickly. So Matt was able to switch horses with a company that he's dealt with called Underwater Solutions, and they are going to, we're going to try to pick up where they left off and do some work next year. Based on some of the other pressures in the department that we've just talked about, the subcommittee's recommendation, there are some projects that need to be done, and we're hoping that, either situation with Underwater Solutions is better than what we're anticipating, but we're recommending that we level fund the capital outlay, line 57015, just in order to try to keep the water fund budget at a more reasonable level. Any discussions about that? Any comments one way or the other from Jen or Matt? I mean,
I would just say, Bob, that your notes in your write-up are correct. It wasn't a problem with quality of workmanship. It was just that Matt was able to negotiate a
oh, okay,
lower contract price.
okay. So I would entertain a motion for water system capital, a budget instead of 512,000 to be 460,000.
So moved, Swan.
Second, Newport.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And a new water fund total, Corey.
475,330. 475,330.
That's for capital outlay, right?
I'm sorry, is that what you said?
Well, I was asking for the whole water fund total.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got caught up on, were you gonna approve?
Actually, we do need to vote on capital outlay, my bad.
That's all right, and how about debt service? Did you wanna do that line as well?
I guess we could vote on it, sure.
The number, so if, we'll back up to debt service first, is that all right?
Sure.
So the debt service is $1,431,038, 1431038.
So what's,
What's changed?
yeah, what's
Yeah, that was
changed?
What's changed? Good
Why,
question.
change from the budget? Because presumably these are all bonds.
West Side Drive.
Did one of the interest rates change or something?
Do you want to speak, sorry?
Yeah, West Side Drive, that issue, it actually was bumped out a year. So we won't be paying that principal and interest this year.
Oh,
Or, I'm sorry, in 2023, we won't be paying it. We won't be paying it.
so the
till-
26,763
Is coming
plus the
out.
small interest amount?
Right.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does that mean we're behind or something, or just hasn't been expended yet or something?
Yeah, it's more just a timing issue
Yeah.
of when the money is coming in
Yeah.
versus when we have to pay it back.
Got it.
So-
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion for that new debt service number.
Confirming that it was 1431038,
That's correct.
I would make that motion.
Zigmont seconds.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So the new capital outlay total, I'm sorry, Corey?
475,330. 475,330.
So moved, Swan.
Thank you.
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And the new water fund total, Corey?
4,548,242. 4548242.
So moved, Swan.
Thank you.
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Percentage, please?
6.8%.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. So we go to the sewer budget. That is in tab 6. Wait a minute, just a quick, quick overview on the warrant articles for the water department. These would include the DPW garage, which, similar to the discussions we had, we will have about DPW general. This would be paid for by all 3 departments, and the subcommittee recommended allocating a small amount of money towards continuing to assess the scope of this building, and probably work hand in hand with the facilities committee and DPW to sort of figure out, what that building will look like and where what is a reasonable location at our facility on Newfields Road. The school street design, the water part of it, $405,000, has been deferred in-house. The West Side Drive, which again, on page 26 of the CIP book, you'll see is also a general fund water and sewer project. There's drainage and sewer work as well as water work. The water portion of this would be $2.745 million. The subcommittee recommends proceeding with that on all accounts. And then the groundwater development project, we will get into the, some details on this on Thursday, but this was deferred in-house to focus on other projects that we wanted to keep the voters concentrated on. Through some extensive discussions with the department as well as their consultants, we did allocate $1 million last year for this work. A significant portion of it, the work will not actually be done until next year in 2023. So we do have plenty of funding to continue work on that project and pursue, as Jen had mentioned, a diversification of our water source more extensively into groundwater, which again is generally cheaper than surface water to treat, and less regulations as well. But the thought was that if for some reason, it might be luck, it might be just good fortune, but if we can get all of the work that we need to have done by the middle to, let's say, toward the end of next year, as you know, our votes aren't until March. And by the time everything gets sorted out, you really can't get going on things until April. If we get some answers that we need to have done and an agreement by the landowner of where our preferred well location is, there might be 5 or 6 months that we could be doing some constructive work. So the subcommittee thought that there should be some level of funding for this. It's not going to go to waste, certainly, if for some reason we don't get the approvals or work out a final arrangement with the landowner. This would just go into 2024 as part of the construction cost. So, we can go into more detail on Thursday night, but basically, there is plenty of work to do, especially if we get the approvals in a timely fashion next year. So we thought that instead of deferring the whole thing, that we would put a much smaller amount, but some money forward to continue work. And then the vehicle that we would be looking at is replacing an aged Crown Vic car on page 56 of the vehicle tab with a multi-purpose truck for both the water and sewer. Okay, so on to the sewer department.
Just to slow down for just
Sure.
a second, Bob. So we'll be continuing to have this discussion, obviously, on Thursday.
Yes.
And I just, want to just sort of.
I wanted to,
Yeah, exactly.
to bring it up
You just-
because
yeah.
the detail in the CIP book
Yeah.
is pretty extensive, and it gives a fairly comprehensive breakout
Yeah.
of the various costs and the various things that need to be done. We can go into that detail on Thursday, but suffice it to say that it's not an all or nothing. We won't be using a lot of the construction cost probably for a couple of years, so we didn't feel like we needed the whole $6 million, but we did need something to go forward in case we could get some
So
active
just for the
production next year.
larger committee and for the viewers at home, there's a lot of internal deliberation about that, and I think we all realize how important groundwater development is, and that it's going to need to happen. So I think it would be just worth having the discussion on Thursday.
Okay, on the sewer fund, which again is on tab 6, the first item would be the sewer portion of the GIS manager. Again, to refresh your memory, 60% would be paid for from the general fund, 20% each by the water and sewer funds. So this is the same discussion we had earlier on the water side.
we've already approved this amount in multiple different areas of the budget.
Yes, we have.
Discussing, I keep coming back to what you shared earlier about where we fall in comparison to other towns. I can't like shake it. And there's nothing that, do we want to just have a little bit more of a discussion about it? Because I am concerned that it's a pretty low number in comparison to other communities who are hiring. And if this is going to be our only person doing this work, are we doing a disservice by starting at such a lower place? I think this is our last chance, right? Because I think we've now gone through all the different parts.
This is the
So
last, yeah.
If I don't bring it up now, I will just regret not bringing it up.
Yeah,
So that's-
thank you.
Well, yeah, we can always go back and re-vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the first time we talked about this the other night, a week ago maybe,
Weeks ago, yeah.
whoever it was, yeah, I think there was a discussion then before we even had Jen's numbers on, comps on that, and it seemed low, and it's a tough job market out there, and I it would be sort of a shame to go forward with this and have to wait a whole nother year to fill the role, which obviously is, with the lead pipe project, among all the other projects that are out there as well, a critical role. What would it take to get it to a more competitive spot? And if you spread that slightly higher amount across the three buckets that it's going to come from, what does that look like to make it a hireable position? Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I'd love to put Russ on the spot about that.
Yeah, you're the experts.
So, I mean, how would this play out? I mean, budget-wise, I mean,
Well, if we wanted to increase the wage, obviously, we'd have to go back into the general fund, the water fund and sewer fund and recalculate the amounts.
Right.
Jen mentioned her comps. We haven't done full-blown comps. I respect what she's done. I think that that's great information to have. I know we were looking at what we felt was a similar position. Melissa and I were looking at a similar position in Rochester, and I think the wage was somewhere around maybe a $10,000 differential from the one that I'm looking at here with the $54,791.
So mid-60s.
Yeah, so I think if we're going to make an adjustment, that's the kind of adjustment I think we would be talking about. And we would have to go back in and like I said, revisit some of these budgets. But the other option the committee has is you can make that sort of a footnote and say that's something that you'd like the select board to take up when the time is theirs, and make an adjustment to the amounts.
I think that's the least that we should do as a BRC. I don't want to, micromanage or dictate to the select board and the town manager, but I think you're getting the sentiment here from the BRC. So I just would love to relay that sentiment at the very least, in some kind of a formal way. If not in terms of a number, then at least in terms of a note, as you suggested. Any other thoughts?
Well, yeah, my feeling has always been that we are a committee that recommends a budget to the select board. So, yes, this is a personnel issue which the selectmen have ultimate jurisdiction over, but they might want to at least hear our thoughts about it, and then they can change it then. So rather than us come up with we don't think this is enough, it should be something else, then they have to hash that out. I think it's always easier to review something in front of you rather than review an idea. So that would be the way I would prefer to go. We can always revote the other budgets.
So for clarity.
It's not that difficult.
For clarity, Mr. Chair, you'd rather have us do the math and come up with a number and make a
Well, I
solid
mean,
recommendation?
I don't know, and we haven't even voted as to whether we want to do something different. But just, just as a comparison, for the total Public Works general budget, I think, if I'm reading the numbers right, Corey said the increase in that budget was 1.7%, which is pretty good, you know, from our perspective. And then the water budget that we just voted on was 6.8%, which, given some of the increases in
Chemicals.
fungible items that
That
we
seems
have no
remarkable.
control over,
Yeah.
again, I think that's pretty good. We were able to keep some of the discretionary budget items at a reasonable level. And again, given what is happening with water-related issues these days, I think that's pretty good. So personally, I would say we have some room to do something, if that's I mean, there's only 6 of us here out of 11, but, you know, we were the ones who bothered to show up, and Liz brings up a good point.
So just for clarity, maybe I'm slow on the uptake on this. Are you saying that you would be comfortable increasing that number as a recommendation to the select board?
Me personally, or, you know?
Or are you suggesting?
No, I'm
that
not
we do
suggesting
that?
anything. If someone on the committee wants to take this, you know, this issue and do something different, as Liz said, you know, we had 3 swings at the piñata, and where
Yeah.
we maybe can hit it on the 3rd one. But, you know,
Yeah.
if it's something that the committee feels strongly about doing, then, yeah, this would, well, it's not even the last chance, because we could go to the select board, you know, when they review the budget down the road, December probably, right?
December 5th,
You
they
know,
will start.
we or the committee through me, however we want to do it, can say, upon some reflection, we would rather do this. I mean, so there's a number of different ways we
Yeah.
can do it.
Well, can I ask the expert, I mean, what do you think, Jen, is the expert here? I mean, what do you think a good number would be? Yeah, I mean, you came up with the original number, right?
Well, again, this is for 2023. It's only 6 months of the year. It's not a full year. And what are our increases in the second half? What percentage are we going up on?
4.5%.
Okay, so my table is,
So just as an FYI, all the details on this position are on tab 2, are on the last page of tab 2,
Thank you.
which is unnumbered, so it's 29 of 28. But it shows both the HR assistant that we talked about, as well as this GIS.
Oh, yeah.
person.
I mean, Mr. Chair, one avenue would be to give Public Works some time to think about it, and then, you know, they can
Oh, we
present it-
wouldn't,
they can
we
present it
wouldn't
to
do the
us.
calculations
Yeah.
now.
And they
What
could-
I would suggest, that if there's a motion to increase, or to suggest, you know, a different salary for this, we could do that, and then we could get the numbers and recalculations, and that could be our first order of business
Yeah.
on Thursday,
Yeah, so
is revoting
Give them
the
time
3
to-
public work division, as an idea. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. You know, Liz brought it up, it's sort of her game to run out, but I think, you know, based on what we've heard from Jen, it could be tough finding
Yeah,
it could be tough finding a qualified person.
absolutely.
You don't
And
know
a year
that,
is a
but it
long
could be.
time. A year's a long time.
well, I didn't do the calcs that Corey in finance would typically do, but just for a grade 11 position minimum step, oh, sorry, I forgot to put the, what did you say, 4 point? What was it?
I think it's baked into this stuff.
Yeah, but we're looking at effective July 23,
Oh, what did you say the Durham position was?
75,000 is where they landed last year with their first hire.
4.5%.
4.5,
above that.
okay.
I think it was in the middle of the range of that job.
32, 317.
And that was
I think
entry
it was
level?
years. That was, well, yeah, that was off the street, but I don't know if it was entry level.
I mean,
33,771 is the 100%, but then you're only dealing with 60, 20, 20, so. In the sewer line that we're talking about, it would be,
Let's just do the full position, and then we can divvy it up. So
Okay.
I'm not looking to get the numbers for the departments. We'll do that on Thursday.
yep,
I'm looking at, I think what we're looking for is your assessment on what
Fair market.
instead of 54,791 for a year salary,
okay.
what would be,
So-
would there be a different number that you think we'd have a better chance of hiring a qualified
So I just
candidate?
came up with 60, no, hold on, 33,771 times 2.
Is that sort of the direction you wanted to go with?
We're approaching something more like 67,542 for a full year, just the
So-
wage piece. It's like, that would be our grade 11 minimum step.
And how long's Rochester's person been on staff?
Rochester's has 2 on staff. I don't know when they started. It was Durham that just started last year.
Okay, and that is a city. I mean, it's Rochester, you
Yep.
could slice it any way you want, but, it's a city versus a town, bigger population versus, but, well, whatever.
But I think it's very close to what Durham is at. Their minimum is 64,000. And we're talking 67,000, and that 64,000 probably reflects this past year, and we're talking about another 4% next year. So I think it's very close to the Durham position, which is program administrator, coordinator.
If you do come up with a figure, I would recommend too that you just vote the dollars and not a grade or anything like that.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
We don't know
this is
anything about
something
that.
this is something, we're actually in the midst right now of doing a wage and classification review.
Right.
Yeah.
A market study, so we have 90-some odd positions that we're looking at, and this one, even though it's a new position, will go in the same hopper as the rest to sort of work out where it should fall. So that is another
So
another
perhaps,
piece of this is that it's actually under review even before it gets created.
that's a really good point. So we could possibly come up with a number as maybe a not-to-exceed recommendation, and then have you be the arbiter as to what we actually publish, the job opening at, period. I mean, you're the town manager, we're just making a recommendation that, maybe we should adjust the ceiling slightly, maybe. So,
What's your reaction to all of this discussion, Russ? I'm very curious. I mean, are you like groaning, like, or?
yeah, I mean, if
what?
it's premature, just, lay it out
I
there.
mean, lay it out
If
there,
we're
yeah.
out of bounds, lay it, just tell us.
Yeah, I think my thought was with this position that we would probably need to move it off of the 54, but I wasn't sure exactly where it would land.
Okay.
And that we would need to review that and then come back. My plan was to come back to the select board with a suggested alternative. So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted to hear. That's the answer you got.
Yeah, I've been struggling with this, not with this line item, but I've been thinking about this to our role for the BRC, recommendation. I'm totally comfortable with the fact that the final call belongs to the select board. But, policy is made through budgeting. That's kind of what I came to in my head. And if this is important, if it's important to the, whether it's a cut or whether it's an addition, I mean, we tend to think in terms of, it's a budget, we want to cut it. But we make policy through the statements that we make with what numbers we put on them. And if it's important to have such a position and we want to fill it and we don't want to wait a year, then we should put a number on it. Now, it's interesting to hear you say, well, don't use grade, and I appreciate that, because I was reluctant to put a number on it. I was like, well, recommend a grade 11 position, but I'm hearing you that that's not the way to go. So it's better to put a number on it, you can
Well, I
manipulate.
mean, I think
the
you could
number.
do some rough calculations. If
Yeah.
we're at, let's say, 55, and the total one-year impact is almost 95,000, then
Yeah.
if we're in the mid-60s,
Yeah,
then it's probably, we're probably gonna be up 108
Yeah.
or so
Yeah.
as a total impact.
yeah. So, I know I'm doing this on the fly, but I guess what I'm advocating for is increasing the number, because it's, at least that's my sense is it's important from where I sit, so I would advocate for the BRC. When we're doing an increase on the fly, I'm always reluctant to put a number that goes to the dollar. I mean, to be honest about it, I'd make it 67,000 rather than 67,542.
Oh,
let's
no,
say.
round it off.
But,
Round it off.
or something along those lines, because, I just want to be transparent about the fact that I don't know exactly what that number is going to ultimately be, but I'm just throwing that out there for consideration.
And I'm going to ask this question because I don't know, coming out of the private sector, if I had the ideal candidate in my office and we had a budget for that role, and it was a great candidate, the person we need to have, I've always had that, a little bit of swag to be able to make that number the right number to get the guy there. I don't know if in your hiring capability, if how stringent you have to be, or if there's funds available to, if we came up with 67,000 recommendation and it got past the select board and that ideal candidate needed 70 or 68, if that's in government, in municipal government, if you got that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, so that's a conversation we would typically have at the point that it presents itself. We would obviously try to get the person for the budgeted wage, but things happen over a 12-month window. You have budget surpluses that you can look at, vacancies, things like that, that might allow you to, a little bit of room to move. So, but again, that's all part of a conversation that we would have with the select board at that time, based upon what the candidate is presenting to us.
Yeah, so I guess, to get on Tom's bandwagon, I guess I'd like to have the discussion that we advocate for an increase to something in that number, and how are we, move forward with that. And obviously, when it gets down to brass tacks, there's going to be a way forward if we get the right candidates.
Well, again, I don't think we are in a position to recommend a salary, but we would recommend
A budget item.
a budget
Exactly.
number not to exceed that the town manager and the select board and the public works department would work with.
Agreed.
So, do you want to pick up the conversation, or how do you want to proceed?
I mean, I'm comfortable going with the number, Jen, that you just said, $68,000, something like that. If we make the motion tonight, is that appropriate, or is it we wait until Thursday?
No, I would say
to
we
do it?
make the motion that we would, referencing the calculation that Public Works has made for a GIS tech on the flyleaf at the end of the tab 2, that we feel as a committee that the wage part of it should be not to exceed X versus 54,791. And then that would give Corey 2 days to
Adjust the
to
line,
Adjust
the
it
other
for the-
line.
for the
calculate it,
different
because we
items.
calculate it in the 20% and all that, and come up with new numbers, and when
We'll just vote on those line items.
Is that enough time to do that?
Absolutely.
I would informally suggest 68,000, because it's I've heard the number 67452. So I would informally, before I make a motion, or before someone makes a motion, suggest the number of 68,000, along the lines of what Bob just articulated. Take the position, budget it out in the various line items based on 68,000, and then leave it to the discretion of the select board and the town manager as to whether or not they're comfortable with that down the road. Then at least we've made a statement as a BRC.
Well, they usually ask me, as the chair, to make a presentation on the budget, and one of
Yeah.
the line items would be,
Yeah.
we looked at this and this is what we felt. So,
Yeah.
it'll be out there. Obviously Nancy's here, so, there'll be a discussion about it, and we will present that formally in our report. This is what we thought. So,
Well, I would throw out 68,000. If we're gonna do it tonight, I would throw out 68,000. We can maybe tweak it once we see Corey's numbers and if we get some feedback back offline or something like that.
well, it's 68, and it's gonna be up probably in excess of 110,000 for a full year increase.
Correct, absolutely. We're just talking about the wage.
So just,
I mean, just to reiterate, is that, Jen and Russ, you think that's appropriate? You're the one that has to hire, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
think we've heard
I think it certainly gives us a point of reference that, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and say we're not in the ballpark. I mean, I think we're in the ballpark, we're well within the ballpark at 68.
yes.
So there was some question, I think some valid questioning about the 54,791 figure. I acknowledge that, so I think 68 will definitely put us in a position to be able to hire somebody.
And just to, you know, if there is a motion to be made, I would suggest that we have as part of that motion, after a review or a discussion of the surrounding town data that Jen was able to provide for us, so that there is a justification for what we do. We're, you know, I think that would be important.
Yeah, agreed.
Where does that leave us on the line item that we're sitting on? Because we were on, I guess, first line of sewer, weren't we?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to.
So do we
We would
tackle that one at all,
No, we
or do
would
we leave
defer.
it be for now?
We would defer the vote on all of that, and
Yeah.
much like DPW general and the water, we would
Yeah.
have to re-vote on.
Right, so we leave this line alone tonight, right?
Yes,
I'm looking at line, I think it's line 51110, right? Salaries,
Yes.
wages, full-time sewer, right, administration?
so we wouldn't vote on admin and the bottom line.
Right, so, but then a motion needs to be made that's sort of separate, that's offline, if you will.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm good with that.
Everybody's looking at Liz.
It's
Liz, you wanna
No,
take
I
a
mean,
stab at
It
it?
seems like a long motion that is made here. But I'll do my best, and Bob can jump in and correct me. So I'd like to make a motion to adjust the GIS position from 54,791 for wages to 68,000 for wages, based on the information that was presented to us tonight about surrounding towns that are similar needs and the wages that are offered in securing employees in those communities, so that we are more competitive here in Exeter.
So moved.
She moved.
Oh, I'm sorry, second, yeah, sorry.
So just for clarity, the figure that you gave, Liz, was a full year figure, and
Correct.
we'll budget for 6 months.
Thank you.
And do all the benefits and recalculate all of that.
I don't know that I could do that motion
Thursday.
again, so yes, all that.
I would just,
Play the tape.
for the motion, if you don't mind, you know, instead of saying a salary of 68, a salary up to.
Salary up to, yes.
68,000, if everyone concurs with that.
Yeah.
Just, again, we're not
Yeah.
gonna be posting the job, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russ and,
Just hope they don't listen to the meeting here tonight, whoever applies for the job.
If we, just hypothetically, if we left it as is, was 54,791 a ceiling?
yes,
Yes.
Okay. Just thinking.
correct. Which
Budget perspective.
we have felt is below market and
I agree.
not
Yeah, I'm
an
just
internal
checking on
discussion.
the
We
ceiling-
had this discussion as a
the ceiling
subcommittee
aspect of that
with the
dollar.
department, you know, there were discussions that this would be a tough,
Yeah.
a qualified person would be tough to find at that wage. You know, because there's a technical component of it, so someone coming out of college would have, or even, you know, from a different job would have a pretty significant technical background. And in today's job market, they would be able to make far more than that with those qualifications. Okay, so moved by Liz, seconded by Chris C. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye to propose a max salary of 68,000 for the GIS tech with the appropriate recalculation for further votes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
There wasn't
Mr.
much
Chair-
time for discussion, but I just, a parting thought is that, I mean, a lot of the time is spent on the salary aspect of it, because that's the number. But I was struck by the fact that all these other towns have all these positions already in several positions. So I'm glad you put forward the proposal for this position. And we're really behind these towns in that regard, I would say. It appears.
I would agree, but we have been blessed with having a person in-house who's been multitasking.
Yeah.
And he's sitting right next to me.
Thank you, Matt.
And making good use of consultants too, using People GIS. But I think, we've gone too long
Yeah.
in that kind of a
Yeah.
making do.
Yeah.
We've got to ramp it up.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you everyone for the discussion. Thanks for your research, Jen.
So,
And
Mr.
your
Chair,
input,
we're-
Russ.
We're gonna run this new number through all the budgets that it will impact.
Yeah.
And then you all will come back and vote on
Vote on
those.
those.
First
lines
thing
that are
on Thursday.
impacted. Okay.
Great, thank you. And if you're brutally efficient and you can craft.
I'm not, but I have someone that is.
If Laura is brutally efficient, if you could maybe, you can either send it to me and I'll distribute it to the committee.
Yep.
But if maybe a layout of what the
Yeah,
numbers would
what
look
it's in
like before
summary.
we actually vote on them,
Yep.
in case we get buyer's remorse. Okay,
We got through
anything?
the first line on sewer.
Yeah, we're,
Sort of.
actually, we're not bad here, we're not bad. Any, just for grins, the new benefits total, well, that'll change, sorry, my bad. So admin, we will not be voting on. Any questions by the, either comments by the subcommittee or questions by the entire committee on the rest of admin, sewer admin? We did not have anything specific in billing. Everything looked fine from our perspective. Any questions, comments on the billing division? On collection, similar,
Bob?
yes.
Are we going to do benefits adjusted numbers in these various
Well, the benefits will
subsections?
change based on this
Right, but
GIS
within the
person.
sections, like, we just skipped admin, but did you want to
Good
do
point. Thank you.
benefits for
Billing. yes.
billing, for example?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Corey, benefits for billing?
52,962, 52962.
So moved?
No, we don't have to vote on that.
Oh, sorry, next one, yeah.
And then the sewer
total.
billing total?
Yeah.
194,187,
And that,
194,187.
and that I will move, Swan.
Okay, a second?
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So on collection, the first item would be road repairs, 55252, similar in the, to the water department. We've had to hire contractors to do this work due to staff limitations. The department has requested that this be $20,000. There's a lot of work associated with new sewer laterals and things like that, and anticipating a budget of 20,000 as opposed to 5. And I did not add that in the report, that was more for discussion. Can you, outside of the fact that we need to use more contractors, is there any other information on this? Or just based on what you're anticipating, it's gonna be a lot more than what we've spent in the past?
This is to provide for contracted services. When we don't have enough staff to get water and sewer breaks done, we have to call an outside contractor to fix it. So these are anticipated repairs. This is anticipated contractor costs for the year to be on standby for us.
Okay. Any further questions?
And just for clarity, that's 55252.
Correct, it would be 20,000 instead of 5,000.
Matt also just reminded me of something, you used a word in there, there's the standby component of it that we discussed, it wasn't there.
Right, because if there's an open trench or some work done,
Exactly.
and there's no contractor, then it ends up being a
An open
driving
trench.
hazard and other things.
Right.
So you do pay a little bit of a premium to have someone who,
Someone
when you
hot
call
too.
them, they're gonna be out there
Yeah.
in the next 24 hours to
Right.
fix it. So I'd entertain a motion for the line item road repairs budget to be $20,000 instead of 5.
So moved, Ron?
Zigmont seconds.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The, as you see in the narrative, both II abatement and pipe relining, these are related to our infiltration and inflow reduction program that we've had for a number of years. Subcommittee felt that the town's doing a very nice job on this. Obviously, there are a number of projects that sort of come up at the end of the year. But we felt that the current budget should be sufficient to get the work done that they're proposing. So in line 55153, the subcommittee is recommending a level funded budget of $20,000. And in line 55369, pipe relining, we're recommending a level fund budget of $40,000 and not the $5,000 increases that were noted in the original budget. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion first on line 55153, II abatement of $20,000.
So moved, Ron?
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that'll be $20,000. And the next 55369, pipe relining, and would entertain a motion for $40,000 instead of 45.
So moved, Ron?
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. On to, I guess we can vote. Is there any other questions on any other of the collection lines? Corey, what would be a new benefits total for collection?
155,640. 155,640.
Thank you. And with the changes that we made, a new collection total.
815,372. 815,372.
Discussion before we vote on it?
Sure.
You want to just enlighten Jen or Matt, the board, on the electricity item 55092, $105,000.
Right.
Electricity went up.
Yeah. I mean, I know, I'm just highlighting
Yep.
it because it's such a major item, right?
Right, no, it is. I think everybody appreciates that electricity rates are going up, even though we do have a contract for our power usage. We still pay Unitil for delivery, and that's not a locked contract. So there is increases in costs for that piece. And it's, as you can see, I don't know, Corey might be able to give us a current date, but we pay by the month, and we're probably not even paid the month of October yet. So it's going to be a pretty big increase for next year. Even though we do have contracted consumption rates, it's the delivery rate that we don't have locked in.
Yeah, we're at 64,000 through September. If you run that out, that gets to about 86,000 for the year, but if we're seeing increases coming, then
And my notes indicate that at one point you threw out a sum of 120,000 and then dropped it down to 105.
Yeah.
Is what my notes say. And my other notes say that at some point this needs to be sort of formally audited or some kind of a use, whatever, analysis of the use of energy might be in order.
That was one of the discussions we had was, again, it's a fairly major effort to, especially in the utilities side, when we're looking at not just what we're paying, but how we're using energy. You know, pumping, variable speed drives, variable frequency drives, you know, all of that, and doing a kind of a more detailed review so that we can hone in on reducing not just the cost, the power cost, but the usage. Yeah. But that's not something we could do right now with our staffing. We're just, we're too lean.
I mean, do you have any control over usage? I mean, if you got a pump, you got to run a thing, you got to run it. I mean,
Well, there's, you know, some of our equipment is nearing replacement, you know, and what do we do? Do we maybe advance replacement for some things that are really using a lot of power that, you know, we could do better on? But coming up with a little bit more of a planned approach for replacing and how we automate that equipment.
thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion for the collection total of $815,372.
So moved, Swan.
Second, Newport.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. On to treatment. Big item of note was equipment maintenance, 55105, about 2/3 of the way down. The existing treatment plant is now entering its third year, will be in its fourth year next year. And this is one of the scheduled replacement items. UV, you know, part of our disinfection process involves ultraviolet light. And the ballasts for these things cost $50,000. So that's the big difference between this year and next year. And outfall dredging, I think, did we talk about that being $3,000?
Yeah, we
I think
did.
that's where I came out with a 3. Did we look any closer at that, Matt?
I haven't had a chance to do that, no.
The thought was, you know, by the subcommittee is that the historicals have been more around $3,000 than $5,000.
Yep.
It's an every other year effort.
Yeah, that'll work. We'll make that work.
Great. So I'd entertain a motion to change line 55204 to $3,000 from the current 5.
So moved, Swan.
Second, Newport.
Thanks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The industrial pretreatment program, the town has a contractor who helps us manage their 5 industries in town for their non-residential, non-commercial discharges. These can have a lot of, you know, metals and greases and fats and other things that are deleterious to our treatment process. So the town has been fairly diligent over the years of having special permits to limit the amounts of these contaminants into our waste stream. And the regulations and or the limits are set by both our Great Bay permit as well as New Hampshire DES. There is a pretty significant revenue offset to this line. we do charge each of the industries for, for their discharges as part of their permit. So this program pays for itself. Let's see what else. Budget notes on lab testing and chemicals, pretty self-explanatory. When you discharge into the second largest estuary in eastern United States, that's what you have to do. Tom?
I'm gonna put Russ and Jen on the spot on this line item. So 55161 lab testing includes the Great Bay total nitrogen testing amount, if I'm correct. I'm recalling the discussions that were had in the subcommittee level. It's also my impression that, or it was my recollection that original request was decreased by the amount of $20,000. So I'm just kind of curious how that plays out relative to whatever agreements that we have with the other towns regarding that permit. So I'm going to put Russ on the spot and just ask him whether or not he has any feedback on that.
I would defer to Jen on that as far
Oh,
as the
damn. Sorry, Jen.
MAAM group.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're meeting in early December, the alliance that works together, the municipalities that all have wastewater treatment plants that discharge to Great Bay, on our budget for 2023, and we do have a proposal at this point. It's not finalized. It is on the order of $75,000 to $80,000, and they'll be, just like this group discusses and determines what the amount going forward will happen in December. So this is correct.
So the 120 we're comfortable with today.
It should be adequate, and we haven't expended the entire amount from this year, so we may, if we need to, we could put in a request to take some of this year, encumber some
Okay.
of this year's funds.
Good.
into
Maybe I
next year.
misunderstood something that was said
Yeah.
earlier, but I appreciate the clarification.
No, I had the same note, that there was a discussion of 140.
yeah.
But, it wasn't
Good.
a hard discussion.
Thank you.
And that's not the only use of
Right.
this line item.
Right.
Obviously,
New
there's,
permits are in place.
Yeah.
So there's extra testing.
yeah, there's more testing going on at the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was a little concerned about the number. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so a couple of the other comments in the narrative are just based on, the sort of the cost of doing business, electricity, solids handling, as opposed to having our own, solids treatment facility as part of the original wastewater design. We opted, and all the regulations thereof that entails, we just send it up to Waste Management's landfill in Rochester, and the costs for that are going up. But it's still a far cheaper and less onerous activity than if we had our own facility. So, any other questions on treatment? New benefits total, Corey?
$202,021, 202,021.
Thanks. And with the changes that we made, to outfall dredging, in the new sewer treatment total?
1,634,617, 1,634,617.
Discussion?
Sure.
So just a comment that, we're how many years are we into the new sewage treatment plant? And we're sort of. Third, well, actually only into our third year, and as we discussed as a subcommittee, we're starting to see some of the, even just the maintenance cost of that thing are just going to start to come into play, which we all knew, but, it's still a pretty stunning number. Right? Would you agree, Jen?
I would say, I don't know if I'd use the word stunning. It was to be expected. I mean,
Yeah.
things like UV bulb replacement.
it's
You're not going to
amazing.
need a replacement in year one.
Yeah.
But you have to be ready when
Right.
they go, because it's such a critical component of
Right.
the treatment processing, we need to have those on hand.
Yeah, so you got a lot of electricity, you've got a lot of treatment processes and a lot of equipment that goes into that. That's just gonna be a fixed cost of running this thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, for years, running a lagoon facility, we were able to kind of whistle past the graveyard and not really recognize the full cost of
Yeah.
things like sludge
Yeah,
and treatment.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is, yeah,
Here we are.
yeah.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve 1,634,617
Second?
for sewer
Thank you.
treatment total.
Excellent. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Are there any revisions to, because there's a West Side Drive component here, so I'm assuming debt service is slightly different?
Correct.
Right.
And what might that be?
Total debt service is now 4,209,659, 4,209,659.
Do we need to move that?
Sure.
I'd like to move that. Swan?
Second? By anyone?
Second.
Liz? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Probably a good spot to mention that we received a nearly $1.4 million state aid grant to offset the cost of the wastewater treatment facility debt payment.
Wow.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yes, when you talk to your legislators, make sure they know how valuable that money is, so it stays in the budget and doesn't get pulled out.
Ooh.
That would be my fear
It's
going
amazing
forward.
that there's still, that there's money, you know, after we do the bond. You know, usually those things are right up front, but to have it 4 years into the note, that's pretty incredible.
Yep, and the idea is that we will continue to receive funding all through the 20-year life cycle of the wastewater. Well, I shouldn't say 20-year life cycle, but the 20-year bond on the wastewater facility.
Is this coming from the infrastructure bill?
No, it's just part of the regular state budget, the state
Wow.
aid grant program.
So it's not trickling down from the federal infrastructure bill?
No.
Oh, okay.
Russ, does that lower rates eventually, or does that just go into, is that baked in already to the budget? or-
So we'll consider that as part of the rate study that we just actually got that approved by the board last night. We're going to have an update to our rates through the rate study, and we'll look at that issue as part of it.
Well, I think you're referring to the water and sewer rates, Russ?
Yes.
You were, I think, were you asking
Yeah.
about the bond rates, or were you talking about?
No, it's just
oh,
if you have money given,
Oh.
you know, that'll either lower the rates or go into the water sewer, what do you call it, the general fund?
The reserves.
Reserves, yeah,
Mhm.
depending on what you said, okay.
Mm,
It can be used to accelerate debt reduction
Or
as well.
that.
mm.
I think the thing to keep in mind, though, is that we have a lot of projects on deck, so
Right.
it's not anything we can look at right up off the top and say, well, we're going to reduce rates, because we have a couple of really significant projects. West Side Drive's one of them, coming down
Yes.
the wire.
But it can
So-
stabilize rates.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sure
It could
can.
stabilize them.
one way or another, yeah.
I mean,
It
we
will
haven't
help.
raised rates in over a year.
So it does, the money, in other words, the money doesn't directly go into the bond and reduce the bond by that amount or anything like that?
Correct, it comes to the town from the state as
Yeah.
as a payment.
Right, oh, but you don't necessarily pay down on the bond immediately with that money?
Right.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you.
So, on to capital outlay. So this is sort of confusing, so I'll spend a minute to go through the math. Last year, we budgeted $200,000 to do, to coat the UV disinfection. This is where on the water side, I mixed up my projects.
Yeah.
So we're gonna coat the flume and disinfection tank walls. There was after a very, not expending a lot of money, it was determined by the department that the contractor's work was deficient, and so they were terminated. So of the money that's left out of of this year, 200,000, 175 being what's remaining, the department would like to use 125 of that to upgrade our septage receiving facility, which is, a third of the town is on septic tanks, and so the septage is what, is pumped out of septic tanks. We do have a charge for that, but our receiving station is not set up appropriately to make this an active commercial enterprise, and Matt and Jen are hoping to do that. The revenue offset of this is pretty significant. There's not a lot of places for these septic haulers to go, and so if we have we have a brand-new facility, and if we have an appropriate septic receiving facility, we can charge a fairly good market rate on that, and more than offset this work. The remaining 50,000 that would be left over from that effort, plus the 50,000 that Matt and Jen have requested for 2023, will go towards trying to figure out that whole coding snafu and what needs to be done to actually get that work done. So that work that was budgeted for this year will not happen until next year, but it looks like other things that were planned will be in motion, and actually to our benefit, because there'll be a revenue offset. So that's why you see that number going down significantly, because they only need the 50,000 next year that goes with the extra 50,000 this year to figure out that coding project, which works out pretty well. Any questions on that?
Brief comment, Matt.
Was that a reasonably
You did an
accurate
excellent
portrayal
job.
of
Thank you.
what we talked about?
Brief comment, Matt. Kudos to you for whoever for highlighting the need for that with the septic receiving, because one of my secret sources in the septic world has indicated to me that it's easier to go to another town right now to do that. So since we have the facility, it might be nice to capture that income, right?
Yeah.
So I assume that's part of your motivation for doing this.
Yep.
I have two quick questions.
Sure.
Was there any recourse on the job not done well as financially to claw back any of the funds that were paid to the people we dismissed?
We didn't pay anything
Okay.
to them.
We didn't pay anything.
Okay, great. The second question is, when we look at septic receiving, does that calculate into shortening the life of the treatment facility overall, or does that volume not affect the life or durability of the facility over time?
I would say that it affects the life of the facility, but what it does do and what we have to be careful of is it does increase loadings. And it's really difficult to anticipate how it may affect, emerging contaminants, let's say. The PFAS, PFOA, it's just too early to say. So we've got to be cognizant of that potential impact. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess
We've only planned on, we try to only take about 15 to 20,000 gallons a day. That's what we've kind of, the engineer kind of said is a good loading for our new plant.
Okay.
So
And
we have a certain amount that we want to take, but also we have the parameters, as Jen said, in the NIPD's permit. So arsenic levels, those type of things could become an issue at some point.
So those could also be limiting factors to the amount of revenue we could generate from that as well, because there would be limits on what we could take.
That's correct.
Okay.
But there is a benefit
There
to
is a
taking the septage, and that's basically, it's a food source for the bacteria in the plant. So
Okay.
we don't have to use quite as much carbon source,
Great.
It's very expensive to purchase carbon source material, and this is kind of an alternative.
Great. Oh, that's very cool.
Is there any kind of like policy on who you take from or who you don't take from, towns? I mean, I suppose it limits itself based on just proximity and distance and cost of travel and all that.
We don't have a policy at this point, but, those are some of the things that we're starting to talk about. Should we limit it to just the town? Should we limit it to the SAU?
Right.
area covered,
Exactly.
but you're absolutely right. It is somewhat self-limiting. Haulers aren't going, as long as our price is competitive or comparable to other
Yeah.
communities, they're not gonna come very far, because it's
Yeah.
expensive to truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
But one of the reasons it costs $125,000 to make one of these is not just a big tank in the ground, that you take stuff from their tank and then throw it into the plant. There's, some testing and management and grading it in, so that it doesn't upset our plant.
And measuring, right? I mean, that was the whole point,
Right.
wasn't it? Also making sure you.
Accuracy and the tanks and
Accuracy.
all that, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so, capital outlay budget is $65,330. I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved, Swan.
Second, Chris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, thank you, and we will defer voting on a sewer total until our discussion Thursday about the
Yep.
GIS person. Just a quick overview of the warrant articles and vehicles for the sewer department. First would be the DPW garage, again, which would be partially associated with the sewer department. $50,000 to continually assess the scope and location of that structure for that facility, and the subcommittee recommends that. The school street design, which includes the sewer component as well as water, has been deferred in-house. West Side Drive, which also includes both a water and sewer component. The sewer component is noted in the narrative, and the subcommittee recommends this project. Court Street Pump Station, we'll get into this a little bit more, but there was some discussion in our subcommittee meeting. There are two issues here. One is, the most important is that there are a number of planned projects in town that, our understanding, I think as a subcommittee, is that this facility would not be able to handle if all of those projects came on board. The other thing is that this is a big project, and we thought that maybe deferring it for a year until some of the other things were taken care of this year might be a good idea. Matt suggested in our subcommittee meeting that perhaps we just replace some equipment and don't go through a full facility renovation until we get the flow aspect in these various projects sorted out. So, have you ruminated on that at all anymore? Is there maybe geez, we have to do something, this year, or is there maybe a better plan? And we don't necessarily have to discuss it now, but maybe by Thursday. I don't know sort of which direction to go here.
Preliminarily, I've heard, Matt had conferred with some of our staff who really are experts. They don't get enough credit for what they do and their knowledge, but that there probably are just some mechanical upgrades that are necessary, and that we could probably get by with that for now, and not have to do the full facility overhaul, renovation, rehabilitation, not renovation, rehabilitation. And that could buy us plenty of time, so.
Can you
We
sort
can-
of suss out a number for Thursday?
Yeah.
For that?
Yep.
For that work, if you could?
And my recollection of the conversation at the subcommittee was that equipment would carry over on a subsequent rehab anyway.
Correct.
Correct? So-
Yep.
Right.
So
So
it
it's
wouldn't
not
be,
lost
in that
money.
regard, it wouldn't be a lost or stranded cost or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the building is pretty old, but a lot of the equipment is over 20 years old, so
Yeah.
coming to the end of its useful life. So the question is, do you defer it for a year or two, or do you need to do something now while still, having a discussion in-house about how these planned projects maybe
Yeah.
impact your facilities? And then that will carry over into the next item, the sewer system capacity analysis, which there's a request by the department for that, and the subcommittee's recommendation on that was, to defer until we do get a handle on all the various projects and how they do impact our sewer capacity, so. sort of get that, preloaded analysis before we start in on the infrastructure part of it. So those are going to be our recommendations. And the vehicles, the same, Crown Vic being traded for a multi-purpose truck. And then the sewer Vector truck is shown on page 58. The financing part of it is shown on page 68. It's 8 years, the current truck is eight years old. It was purchased in 2014. It's just around the end of its useful life. The department takes immaculate care of this equipment. Even though there's a fairly long lead time in ordering it, the subcommittee felt that we could get at least another year out of it since it's still in very good shape. So we'll be discussing that more in length.
Oh.
Any add-on comments by the subcommittee? Or anyone else on the committee? Thank you, both Jen and Matt. I appreciate.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time and both with the subcommittee and tonight. And one more meeting, Jen. The ball's rolling downhill.
I have to pick her up now and bring her.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Okay, our next meeting is Thursday night at 6:30 in 2 days. We'll be discussing the CIP list that I sent around, including vehicles. And so hopefully everyone will be prepared to discuss those items in detail. If no further comments or questions, we are adjourned till Thursday, November 17th at 6:30.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.